Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Dental Momentum podcast powered by Duckett Ladd Dental CPAs and Advisors. Jared Duckett back at you with my business partner, Bill Ladd. And Bill, I'm telling you, man, in the past, I don't know, 12 months, say a year, we've met some really, really good people. And again, I said it in the podcast episode, another one of these episodes, but that ABC Always Be Connecting. And it's all about connecting with the right individuals that really work in the right industry or the right space that helps our clients out, dentists, and are just really knowledgeable. And we've got another one today that we've met through a mastermind group, Freedom Founders. You guys have heard us talk about a lot. But I'm really excited about this one, Bill, about how we can really, get some insight into this that probably a lot of times is just taken for granted to a degree. It's just like, hey, we got it and we're good. But today we're kind of getting to the credit card processing, if you will, the fees being charged on that. And I think it's going to be really good info for our listeners, Bill.
Yeah, I think most people understand that credit cards are just a cost of doing business, that, you have to do it. You have to do it or you will likely lose a portion of your base because nobody carries cash. Nobody wants to write checks anymore. So just because you have to do it doesn't mean you have to overpay for it. And I think that's where a lot of people, including us and others, we just kind of go for the first thing that hits our radar. And, since we got to know Cheryl, I think there's a whole nother level to this that people just don't know about. And again, in the spirit of trying to give people good information, make good decisions, I think we're going to have a good conversation today.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. And, guys, today with us, we have Cheryl McKenna with Merchant Advocate. And Cheryl, we haven't seen you in person in a long time. We've seen you on these Zoom calls, right? But excited to get face to face when it's legal again and see each other. Hang out. But just intro yourself there, Cheryl. Kind of tell us what you do and really how you help dentists.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much. It's really great to see you, even if we're not in person, but it's still nice to see people, right? It's been a long time. So so my name is Cheryl McKenna, and I'm the Director of New Business at Merchant Advocate. And Merchant Advocate is a very unique organization. We help any business type, but I specialize in dental, but we help all businesses in the United States and Canada that take credit card payments from their clients. We help them to save money, but we are not a merchant service provider. Okay, so that's the difference. We are a merchant advocate. We sit on the same side of the table as a business owner in order to ensure that they are paying the least amount possible to accept those credit card payments from their clients. In the case of dentists, obviously it's a patient. Merchant services is an unregulated industry, and anyone who's listening to this, if you can do this in the next day or two, pull out one of your merchant statements or go onto your online portal and take a look at all of those line items and all of those acronyms. All of those are ways that you could be overpaying unnecessarily. Processors are allowed to charge pretty much whatever they want, raise rates, hide fees, and because it is so complicated and it is unregulated, a lot of times practices are overpaying to accept credit cards. So that's what we do. We dive into the merchant services program. We find every penny that a business is overpaying. So it's basically profit that you're unnecessarily paying your processor and you don't have to. And then what we do is if we save a business money, we take a portion of it. So effectively, it costs nothing to work with us. We create our own paycheck and we put money back into our clients' pockets.
Yeah, so you hit on something there that's very key, is that you are not a merchant service provider.
No.
Right? Yeah, so people might be thinking, well, I don't want to switch service providers. You said it perfectly. You are sitting on the same side of the table as them, the business owner, advocating on their behalf to save them money on those fees, right?
Exactly. Now, I will say that sometimes the solution for a particular practice is to switch processors. So if we go through this whole exercise of really diving into those statements, and maybe a practice wants a certain type of technology that their processor doesn't offer, or if their processor is overcharging them and they say, you know what, no, I'm not going to lower the costs. Then the solution might be, hey, we have these preferred providers, right? Do you want to take a look at what one of these has to offer and what the features would be, the technology and the pricing to switch? But they don't have to switch. The practice is in the driver's seat. It's our job at Merchant Advocate to go through and see how they're processing transactions. Are they doing it the most efficient way, the most cost-effective way? What type of technology does their processor have available? And just ensure that they have the best program at the lowest cost. So
I think what you said there is interesting, is that, you know, if we mean by word, like you're getting at, Jared, there's really not a conflict of interest, because the only interest you have is for the dentist, you know, making sure that they're being serviced well by whatever DaaS solution, you know, provider they have, and that may not be the one they're currently with. So Cheryl, is that one of the pushbacks you tend to get the most? Is it, hey, it's a hassle, I don't want to mess with? I mean, what would hold somebody back? I mean, this just seems like such a no-brainer to us. I mean, what's the process like, and what's keeping people from doing it, jumping in and just doing it?
That's one of the things that I run into. So, you know, the old adage, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Yeah. So I feel like that's what I run into a lot. I mean, I've talked to people before and they say, what's the catch? I'm like, there is no catch. Not sure what else to say. I promise there is no catch. We've been around since 2007. I myself work with hundreds of dental practices all over the country. Merchant Advocate's reputation is impeccable. My reputation is impeccable. We really just want to do the best that we can for our clients. And one of the other items that I think keeps people from moving forward is that they think it's going to take a lot of their time. Because when I explain the merchant industry and everything, what we're going to do, if I don't really impress upon people, hey, this from start to finish, between doctor's time and maybe doctor goes ahead and, you know, turns over some of the small tasks to the office manager, I would say it's a total of an hour to an hour and a half. So if you want me to, I can kind of explain really quickly, like what the process is.
Yeah, do that. Just kind of walk a listener through, like they own a dental practice. What would I need to do? Okay, reach out to Cheryl, but what would they need to do to kind of see, you know, what the end result would look like?
Absolutely. So what I would like to see from the practice is the last 3 current merchant statements. So I want a quarterly snapshot of that practice's processing volume. Okay, so this is like the before Merchant Advocate picture. Okay, so the few minutes that it takes to either pull those out of your filing cabinet, those 3 current merchant statements, or to go onto your processor's online portal and download those and then email them to me. Okay, so once I receive those 3 statements, I'm going to send you an email that says, hey, thank you so much. And it's going to explain exactly what's going to happen next. My team is going to perform a preliminary analysis. So what we want to determine is the practice being overcharged, yes or no? Because we're performance-based, right? We only get paid if we save a practice money. If a practice has a good program, they're not a candidate for our service. So we need to first determine, is the practice being overcharged? So once my team lets me know that, then it's going to be one of 2 options. Either one, you are being overcharged, so please click on this link to my calendar and schedule a half an hour phone call. And during that time, it generally doesn't take a half an hour, but I like to go ahead and just set that time aside in case people have questions. But schedule a half an hour on my calendar, and then I'm going to explain to you kind of what we found and the next steps. And then you can decide if you want to move forward. And again, why wouldn't you? If you want to move forward and engage merchant advocates so we can advocate on your behalf and save you money. So that's option one. Option two is you have a good program, go ahead and click on this link and schedule 15 minutes on my calendar. And what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to be able to give you a few tips or tricks or things to watch out for. So yeah, you have a good program, but maybe you can implement a few things and you can save $50 a month. You know, that's up to you. So there's the gathering of the statements, there's the phone call with me, and then we have a simple 2-page agreement that allows us to, it basically authorizes us to get in front of their processor, look at the statements, do the really, really deep dive. That's when we do the deep dive into those statements. So when I said, go ahead and pull out those statements and look at all those acronyms, that's when we dissect that statement and we find every single penny that a practice is overpaying, okay? And then once we complete that, we let the practice know, here's what we think we can save you, and we're gonna get to work. So there you go. So now we're up to what, maybe 40, 45 minutes? That's it. Now, if the processors want to, not all processors want to talk to us because first of all, they're at a disadvantage by having an expert kind of go through and negotiate. And also, I feel like our goal at Merchant Advocate was to be a disruptor in the merchant services industry, and we've accomplished that goal. So with some of the processors, we've caught their hand in the cookie jar too many times. So in that case, but we'll ghostwrite everything for the practice. So it's simply a matter of, here's this email address, here's this email text, copy and paste this into an email, send that, forward us the reply.
So in most of this, Cheryl, are you dealing with, I'm going to say the office manager or the owning doctor?
Well, so both actually. So in the initial phase, normally I will talk to the doctor and explain kind of the merchant advocate, kind of what I'm doing right here, right? And then either they will send me their statements or they'll say, hey, I'm going to have my office manager send those to you. Okay, great. So once we complete the preliminary review, then either usually if they have a good program, then I'll do the 15-minute phone call with just the office manager, unless the doctor really wants to be involved. But if they don't, and we believe that we can save the practice, you know, more than $100 a month, then I want to definitely have that phone call with the doctor. And the office manager is certainly free to participate because I think it's really important that I'm an advocate of the whole team kind of being on board, or at least the necessary players, right? So yeah, but then after that, once doctor gives the go ahead, I can generally handle everything and my team can handle everything with the office manager, which is really just either a check-in on the negotiations or please forward this email that we ghost wrote for you. And then once we get the new rates and fees, then I like to have a call with the doctor and explain, here's where your rates and fees were, and here's where they are now. And this is what we've been able to save you. So yeah, I work with both generally.
So when you kind of look at that process, it's really very low time, very low risk. I mean, there's really no cost to it until the point that you say, these are the potential savings we could look at. Would you like us to do a deep dive? And at that point, they sign up, you do your job. It really doesn't matter what they said, but you still have to deliver those type of savings before you get paid. Is that right? Or how does your performance-based pay work?
You're absolutely right. So the reason why we gather the 3 statements at the beginning is this is a very simple before and after model, merchant advocate service. It's really easy. It's like the processor's statements show us what the rates and fees were before merchant advocate got involved. Now, once we negotiate with a processor, or I don't know, we have to optimize something, or we have to work with the team to get them to change something that they're doing at the practice so they can qualify for lower rates and fees. But the after snapshot is also that merchant services statement from their processor. So it will show different rates and fees, right? So maybe a practice was getting charged, just as an example, $2,000 before we got involved. It was an average of $2,000 a month, or maybe it was an average of 4% of their total credit card processing volume per month. But then after we've applied our fixes, we've completed the negotiations, the new rates and fees have gone into effect, instead of that practice paying $2,000, maybe now they're paying $1,500, right? And so instead of them paying 4%, maybe we got them down to an average of 3%. So it's very easy to quantify the positive impact we've had on that practice's rates and fees, because the merchant services statement is showing us, right? Yeah. Maybe their monthly fee was $20 before and we got it down to 10, or their transaction fee was 15 cents before and we got it down to 12. So that's what I mean by the before and after picture. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Okay.
And maybe a dental practice owner right now is thinking, well, 1%, that's not a big savings. Well, it is. And we talk about it all the time with our clients. I mean, 1% here, 1% there. I mean, 1% on $500,000 is a lot of money, right? Mm-hmm. And so it adds up very quickly. Is there a way, and there's probably not, because your process you just went through is really, why wouldn't you just go through the process to see if I'm getting overpaid or not? But is there a way, if a dentist is like, hey, I'm not overpaying, I know it, because I'm only paying like low percentage on this stuff, or is there something like that, or any triggers that they could be looking at, or is it more just, just let us take a peek and see if we can help? Yeah,
it's really just let us take a peek, because, and I say this so often, there's no one perfect price, right? So, and I'll give you an example. The lowest percentage, like average, so all in, right, what this practice was paying a month to accept credit card payments from their patients after we were able to negotiate and do everything we needed to do. The practice paid an average of 1.38% of their total credit card. That's my record. So
that's low, isn't it?
Yeah, it's my record low.
Yeah.
Right? So, but there are some practices where maybe we'll get them down to 2.48%, and that's great.
That's still low.
Because it depends on how they're accepting credit cards. It even depends on, so this specific practice was a clinic in an area, and they had a low average ticket. They did a lot of transactions, but they had a low average ticket, and they happened to have patients that a lot of them paid with debit cards because of that. And the banks in their area were actually larger banks, so they were regulated. So the cost for debit was lower. So there's so many factors involved, right? So there is no perfect price. 1.38, I was like, wow. And that was quite some time ago. I'm still chasing that. Like, I want to break that record. But yeah, so it could be 1.38 is great for you, or it could be 2.48 or 2.58 is great for your practice. So, but really, ultimately, it doesn't matter, because our job is to get you down to your perfect number.
Yeah. And they can all be different. So let's say somebody goes through the process, Cheryl, and they get to that perfect number. It may not be 1.3. Let's say it's 1.5 or 2 or something great, better than what they've ever had. I mean, what do? They just kind of lock that in and then just roll on? Or, I mean, is this something you have to be vigilant on, or is it something that is really one and done?
No, it's not one and done. And generally a practice's rates and fees, they didn't start out where they are now, right? So when they were sold this new processing, it was probably because of this amazing rate, right? And they saved money, and that's why they switched and all that. So it's a great question, because part of merchant advocate service, and this is really where a lot of the gold is in our service, is that we monitor the account every single month. So every month we are pulling our client statements. I mean, you can imagine what my team goes through. There's 4 days a month I can't even call into corporate unless it's an emergency, because that's what the team is doing. So they're performing line by line reviews on those statements, and then we go back to our clients' processors 2 to 3 times every year. And even in COVID, where you would think that these processors would, for some reason, maybe find some decency in them and not increase rates. Oh no, we've gone back to some of our clients' processors 3-4 times this year, which I think is really shameful, but it just proves that someone needs to be looking out for this. And unless you speak merchant services and you understand all those line items, it's not something you can do on your own, for sure.
Yeah, I kind of picture this credit card processing industry as like the hood of a pickup truck, right? And in the old school, you could open up the hood of your pickup and everything's wide open and you could work on it. But now I picture it like you open up the hood and everything's all compact and it's like, how do I even fix anything? And the key there is you got to take it to a specialist, right? You got to take it on somebody who can work on that. And that's what you guys are. You work on this day in, day out, and you know the moving parts and you know how to save money.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you say that. I've been in merchant services for 23 years. And when I started, we didn't even have rewards cards. Like there were no airline miles cards. It was so much easier. And my son and I were watching Home Alone 2. The one where he goes to New York, right?
Yeah.
And he's in a really nice hotel and they decide to run his credit card. And, you know, my son's like, what terminal is that, Mom? It's like this, it's a square, right? And it has like the analog numbers and everything. I'm like, that's a trans 330, honey. And it hooked to a phone line. Do you know what a phone line is? So it's definitely become more complicated. Statements have gone from 1 page and 1 rate to like 5 pages and just, you know, maybe there's 150 line items on that statement. But each one of those is like a piece of the puzzle. And I was doing a Facebook Live for a group that I worked with forever, the American Association of Dental Office Management. And the president of that, her name's Heather, and she said, I've never seen someone as excited as Cheryl to look at a merchant statement. I'm like, yeah, that's me. So I mean, you guys love what you do. I couldn't do it. So
well, it's a lot like a dentist, you know, having insurance billing codes or, you know, us kind of understanding certain metrics. I mean, you try to stay in your lane and that's why a lot of this stuff probably just goes by the wayside is people want to delegate this area of their lives to somebody else and just move on. So when you kind of look at a beginning of a practice, when somebody comes in, let's say they're buying a practice, Cheryl, I mean, say they're buying existing practice. I mean, is that a good time for them to kind of jump in or when do you recommend people really start trying to look at this to maybe get off to that good start, you know, with a good relationship with somebody like you and then also with their provider as well?
I feel like if I haven't looked at a practice's statement in the last 3 months, they should just send me their statements. Because like I said, we've seen quite a few rate increases in 2020, which again, you'd think that they would have at least maybe held off, but they didn't, right? So, and now, I mean, look, profitability is always really important. It's critical to a business, obviously. You can't continue to practice unless you're profitable, right? But if we can find some more in there for you, I mean, there's just no need to be overpaying. And because changes happen all the time, that's why we monitor our client statements every single month. It's not because it's not necessary, that's for sure. So
Cheryl, help me understand. I mean, is there no, I mean, can they raise rates at any time? I mean, can that happen month by month if need be, or is it that simple or for them to do that?
Yes, it's an unregulated industry. Yeah. So it used to be that they had to put a statement message, like a pretty specific message at the bottom of the statement, which frankly, I mean, a lot of times that doesn't do any good anyways, because people are too busy and they're not reading the statement messages. But now they don't have to put a statement message. And when they do, it says something like this: you may notice some changes to your rates and fees in December. By continuing to process with us, you're acknowledging that basically like you're okay with that. Thank you. We value your we value you as a client. Thank you very much. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
That was real specific. So we're aware at Merchant Advocate, like every time Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, every time that they raise rates, there's plenty of notification put out there. So we know in the month of April, we need to look at client statements and look at these specific categories, because processors are allowed to raise rates for cost of doing business, right? But a lot of times the processors take this opportunity to increase rates more than their cost of doing business was increased. Does that make sense? So maybe Visa says, oh, on the most popular rewards card, we're going to raise cost by 0.1%. And one of the processors says, oh, okay, well, we're going to raise it by 0.2%. So when we look at that, we go, no. We know that your cost, increase was only 0.1, but you tried to, increase by 0.2. So, and then the other thing is, like, you'd be amazed at how many errors we find on a statement. And you only have 60 days to identify that error and go back to the processor and make them refund you or fix the error, or else you're done. Your time to address that is gone. And it says that in their agreements that you sign, in their terms and conditions. You have
that's really scary. You kind of use the word unregulated in an industry that has so much dollar volume go through it. I mean, that's just unfathomable, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You hit on, getting a client down to 1.3 or 1.38%, whatever. Can you, I'm gonna put you on the spot here, but can you have a couple examples like, we saved this client X amount of dollars for the year kind of thing? So maybe some of the listeners can be like, oh, wow, we are talking about decent amount of money.
Right. And I mean, there's definitely home runs, right? So I'll give you examples of maybe some of the past couple clients that I've taken care of. So there is a practice in North Carolina that I recently worked with, and we've had the opportunity to get what we call our first month report created. And what that is the new rates went into effect that we negotiated, or we made the team change this, or who knows, whatever we had to do, right? So in this specific case, though, there were a couple of things that were huge factors involved. So the gross savings was $1,800 for the first month. That's a pretty big amount.
Yeah, for sure.
$1,100 of that $1,800 was completely made up line of fees that we found on that merchant statement.
Whoa. What do you mean made up? That doesn't, I mean, what do you mean made up?
They sound like good, like discount expense for credits. You're like, okay, there's no, the processor, first of all, that's one of the worst ones I've ever seen. Like, I laughed so hard, but then it was also really sad because I was like, wow, there's no cost to the processor that's discount expense for credits. But somebody somewhere said, hey, I think we need to be a little bit more profitable. So let's make up a line item. What shall we call it? I mean, I can only imagine that they sit around just trying to figure this out. So yeah, $1,100 was completely made up, and they had no idea. And they had been paying those for, I think one of them, they'd only been paying for 7 months, but one of them, just for kicks, I said, what's the oldest statement that you have? Like, send it to me because I want to see. And they went back, they were able to find a statement back 23 months. They had been paying that particular line item, so one out of the two, for 23 months.
Wow.
No idea. So think of how much money they flushed down the drain in 23 months unnecessarily, right?
It's hard. It's hard enough just being a business owner, but when stuff like that's going on too, I mean, that's just making it double difficult.
Yeah, for sure. So what was the process there? I mean, did you speak to that processor on their behalf and kind of get to the bottom of it? Is that how that worked?
Yep.
And they ended up writing that fee off.
Yeah, they removed the fee. Yes.
Wow.
There was no credit though. I mean, occasionally we'll get a credit. So okay, that was a home run for sure. Then there's a practice that I worked with. This one I think is in Texas. Yes, it's in Austin. And he even with working with us, he was so sick of seeing the statements. So he called me the other day and he said, Cheryl, I'm going to switch processors. And I'm like, why are you going to do that? Like you're in such good shape right now. He's like, yeah, but this other company, they offered me a flat rate. And it's just simpler. Like, I don't want to look at these statements. I said, well, you don't really need to look at the statements. That's what we're doing. But just out of curiosity, let's talk through this process. Cause I never want a client to change processors ever without talking to me. There's some narrowly avoided horror stories for sure that people have gotten in touch with me at the last minute. But this particular practice, he said, well, they're going to make it really easy on me. I'm going to get a statement. It's just going to be my processing volume and it's going to be 2.49%. And I said, but last month you did $87,000 and you're down to a 1.73. Now, granted, we're taking some of that. I said, but let's just do the math, right? So I pull out my calculator. I'm like, let's just do the math together. And so it was going to cost him an extra like $200 and some dollars, $247. I was like, why do you want to do that? So that shows you like how much people cannot stand looking at those merchant statements and how they really want to avoid it. So for him, it was such a frustration that he was going to pay more, but he wasn't even thinking about it until we did the numbers. So there's one example. And then another practice came to me, that huge practice, 8 locations in the Austin, San Antonio area, been my client for so long. But there was a change in the person that I normally was working with. And so the new people got in touch with me and they said, oh, we've got this great deal. They're going to give us, this rate. And I'm like, well, people can say whatever they want. Send me the contract. So they sent me the contract. And I crunched the numbers. And granted, this is a big practice. And I said, do you know how much this is going to cost you guys if you sign this contract? They're like, no. I said, $9,672 more a month. They said a year. I said, no, a month. Do not sign this. And they were so mad. They were really insulted because, the sales guy came in and he was their friend and he was like high-fiving us and how excited he was to be working with us and what a great decision we made. I was like, yeah, you have to be careful. So it's an unregulated industry. They can price you at whatever they want. People that are selling it don't have to have any education. I mean, it's not like you guys have to have so much, not just initially, but all the ongoing, same with a dentist, right? We've got to have CE every year, but merchant services, it's like the wild, wild west. And because it is so competitive and there's so much money to be made, they're always trying to find ways to hide a fee or increase a fee or just be really, really sneaky. So, yeah.
Yeah. The more and more I sit here and listen to you talk, the no-brainer word just keeps coming to my mind. Why you wouldn't just have Cheryl take a peek and see what you're looking at right now. But I think the biggest benefit is that ongoing relationship of just constantly making sure that it's not just a one-time fix. It's not like you can get this rate and lock it in for 30 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you get the rate and then it can fluctuate. So you as an advocate working on their behalf is one of the biggest parts of the relationship as I see it.
Well, yeah. And sometimes with different processors, we know that we can get a certain percentage, we can eke out a certain percentage. But then we know we can go back to that processor in 3 months or 6 months to get maybe 10, 20% more beyond just the rate increases that might happen along the way or the made up line items that get entered on. So I was talking to a client the other day. This is a veterinary practice in New York. Near New York City. And I said, look, this is where we've gotten to, but we're very familiar with your processor. Like we have to wait another 3 months. So we've got it on so that negotiator that's assigned to that particular client, she has it on her calendar to go back to that processor in 3 months and get a little bit more because some of them are only going to go so low each time, but we've worked with them. Again, we've been in business since 2007. So we know where we can get to and then exactly when we can go back and get more.
Yeah.
So hit on Cheryl a little bit. Let's say with COVID and or just in general, I guess. Talk about just briefly what are some of the changes you're seeing, in the credit card processing industry?
Well, what I'm seeing is that particularly for practices, they're hand entering sales a lot more than they used to, right? So, and Visa has announced that, again, they were supposed to do this in April, the biggest increase that they've ever done to certain types of hand keyed sales. So I'm always trying to get ahead of that, right? So the good news is that we know it's coming. We're not exactly sure when it's coming, but we know that it is. So we can go through and you'd be amazed at what those line items on those statements actually will tell me. I can tell if they're swiping a card, chipping a card, hand entering a card. I can tell if they hand enter a card, what kind of data is coming through. I could tell if they're accepting insurance cards, virtual credit cards, reimbursements from the insurance company. So we can get ahead of all those things, say, okay, this is what we see going on in the practice. And frankly, a lot of times the doctors don't know because of course, they've delegated that to, maybe they have a front office manager or just an office manager or whatever. They're leaving that to the team, but the team doesn't understand the financial impact of the changes that they've made. Like, oh, well, we're checking in every patient from the car. Okay, well, and then we're having them call in and give us the credit card number. All right, well, there are some other options here because that's costing you like 30 to 50% more right now. And wait till Visa increases because Visas are 65% of what these practices are taking. So we need to get ahead of it and figure out different ways to tweak their processes so that they can start saving money now, but not be subject to this 47% increase that's coming because that's going to be huge for people. That's going to be bad.
Cheryl, that is huge, and nobody knows it. I mean, you had talked before we hopped on here. Yes, you, but before we hopped on here, you mentioned that to us. We had never heard. That's not something that hits the, the general knowledge out there, as far as I can tell. So that specialized knowledge and the educational component, I think, is another huge value add you guys offer. Is hey, I understand that. You guys may do it this way, but you might want to consider doing this way because there's a hidden cost in there that you have no idea about, and you never would.
Mm-hmm. Well, and part of the privilege that I've had to work with so many practices is I get to see a lot of different creative solutions. And some of my practices tell me, well, I heard you on this podcast or on this Facebook Live or whatever, and so it made me realize I need to look at this. And so now we've implemented that. So sometimes it's not even something that I, came up with for them, but they're calling me and they're like, well, now we're doing this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's perfect. I've never heard of anybody doing that before, but thank you. And I'm going to add that to my repertoire of suggestions. Like, hey, would this maybe work for you? What if you changed it and you just did this? Or what if you added this type of terminal? Because I know your processor offers it and I know exactly how much your processor charges. Or I have a contact at your processor and I can always get buy one, get one free deals on those. So should we do that? Yeah.
I keep going back to no brainer. You know how hard this would be for an owning doctor or an office manager to try to do this on their own?
Well,
they wouldn't.
No, that would be because it's too much.
It would be like me trying to do what you guys do.
You're exactly right.
Or me trying to do what they do. Like,
right.
I have an orthodontist. We have a general, we go to Dr. Caraway for when we need something, orthodont. Like I have Invisalign. Like my son had, he's getting ready to get braces. We go to Dr. Adams for general stuff. Like I'm not going to do that. That's not what I trained for.
Yeah.
So
it's just the benefit of a specialist in an industry, knowing the ins and outs and having them on their team. Somebody exactly like you to advocate for them and help them out on things that they don't need to concentrate on. They need to use their skill sets over here.
Right. Yeah. That's what makes the world go around, right? That we all specialize. You can't, jack of all trades, master of none. So.
Right.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, this is a ton of gold nuggets, Cheryl. End us on the question. So dental practice owner out there right now, what advice would you give them so that they can start getting momentum in their practice?
Well, definitely try and look at the processes at your practice and make sure that you're not hand entering too many of those patient credit card payments, right? There are definitely things that there's a time when you need to do that. Like if someone owes after the fact, insurance reimbursement came back, it wasn't as much as everybody thought it was going to be, there's a balance owed, fine. Text to pay is great in that scenario. But one of the things that I'm seeing is that people love text to pay, right? It's like the sexy thing in merchant services, but it costs practices a lot of money. So pay attention to what's going on in the practice. Anytime that a credit card is physically at the practice location and somebody needs to pay, you need to swipe it, chip it, Apple Pay, Google Pay, whatever that is, but you need to definitely avoid those hand keyed or text to pays for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cheryl, tell our listeners out there how they can get in touch with you to kind of start this process.
Absolutely. So you can text me information at 720-526-5318. Just introduce yourself and send me an email, and then I can send you an email about how to get those statements to me. That's a really easy way. A lot of people love text nowadays, but not text to pay. No. Or you can email me, or you could just call me at that number too, but you can email me, and it's C like Cheryl, and then my last name, McKenna, McKenna at merchantadvocate.com. So an advocate is singular. C McKenna at merchantadvocate.com.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll make sure to put the phone number and the and your email address, all your contact info in the show notes.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody listening out there right now, you're probably, if you've never thought how much you're paying, like I said, you don't want to look under the hood and see all the moving parts. Cheryl knows what it looks like under the hood. She can do that for you on your behalf to help you save money and make your life better. So guys, I appreciate you listening. As I always say, SSR, subscribe, share our podcast. Somebody you know out there would want to listen to this right now. Make sure you share that with them. Give us a rating, leave a review. As always, guys, we're here to help. Thanks for listening. Have a great week. We'll see you.
Thanks. Bye.
Sure.